Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We're ready to begin today's school board workshop. Purpose of the workshop is an update on the COVID-19 coronavirus, followed by an agenda review for tomorrow regular school board meeting agenda. I don't see Ms. Wood.
Yeah, you want me to go ahead and introduce?
Dr. Adkins, take it away.
All right. Yes, as you know, I do appreciate the flexibility being able to put this item at the first portion of the agenda. We have been in contact with the Sheriff's Department, who's invited us to a press conference at 2 o'clock. So myself and several key members of staff, including Ms. Whiff, will be in attendance to that. We have been closely monitoring this situation for quite some time. Our principals were briefed. She did a great job last week briefing our principals and our leadership team, and I just think it's important for us to make sure that we're all in really good communication during this period of time. So I'm again appreciate the flexibility of this agenda and us being able to do this first. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Beth, and she will take us through the presentation.
Good afternoon.
Quickly on what we have done so far in preparation for the COVID-19 virus and kind of our plans that we have in place right now. So we've developed a web page, as I'm sure you've probably seen on the district website. It's up on the screen there. That's solely dedicated to the COVID-19 virus. On that web page, we've included lots of helpful information for our parents as well as our staff and members of the community, just to give them some information on what the COVID virus really is, some signs and symptoms, things that parents can do to try to protect their children as well as the community, and then also what we're doing in the schools to kind of prevent the spread as well. We've also included links on the website to CDC information. We've also included local as well as state guidelines, and we've included information pertaining to our schools directly. So parents are able to go onto this website and to get a lot of information and a lot of their questions answered. So we hope that that will be helpful to our families. And as we get updated information, which seems to be coming in daily, we are adding that to the website to keep them informed and give them the latest updated information. We've also briefed the principals, as Dr. Adkins was saying last week at the principals meeting. I spoke just to inform them of kind of the plans we have in place, what we've done so far, the monitoring that we're continuing to do, and ways that they can help support us at the school level in the prevention of this virus. So we are tracking signs and symptoms in our clinics on a daily basis, as well as monitoring absentee rates on a daily basis so that we can see if there's any increase and if that's related to illness or if it's related to other issues. So we do have that in place. I am in daily communication with the local health department and weekly with the state health department, just continuing to get updates, any new information that we need to know at the school district level. We did have a meeting last week, the executive team and chiefs, as well as the superintendent. We met with Lee Health Physicians, their epidemiologist, Dr. Sanders, and she was very helpful in kind of sharing with us what they're doing at the hospital level and in the community to try to help prevent, as well as keep us informed of ways that we can also help prevent the spread. So that was really helpful. We've also created a pandemic plan for the district, and that's located on our district webpage for everyone to view. And that's just in the event that the health department and the CDC informs us that we are in a pandemic. At this time, we are not, but we do want to have plans in place to make sure that we're prepared. So that's available on the district webpage as well. Today, we met with the chiefs, the superintendent, and myself to create a plan for a return to work and return to school after spring break. So we have preparations in place and procedures in place for those who may decide to travel outside of the country to the 5 identified countries that the CDC have viewed as level 2 or level 3 threat, as well as those traveling on cruise ships. So we do have a plan in place now for re-entry into our schools should that occur. And I feel our leadership in our district has taken a very proactive approach to the COVID-19. I'm very proud of the efforts that they have put into place to keep our students, our staff, and our district safe. It's inevitable that this is going to spread and we are going to see more cases, but I feel like that we are very prepared. We've taken a proactive approach and we have great plans in place as well as continuous communication to keep us all informed and safe. Any questions?
One of the things that we are going to put out today will be some additional information, guidance to our students and also staff relative to if you are traveling to these countries, self-quarantining and requirements to, or if you have any contact with an individual that is known to have the virus. So in these 2 cases, that would be a requirement that you would be quarantined and be in contact with a health official, either your doctor or the health department, and then you have to get, you would have to get some type of certification to come back into the school district under those circumstances, putting out warnings because we are going forward for spring break and people will be traveling. So again, that is something that is of a concern that we want to make sure that we're getting out some guidance to our to the expectations of our students and staff relative to if they do travel abroad. That's again information that we'll be putting out today. As mentioned, I believe our maintenance department and our custodians are continuing to do deep cleaning as we normally do actually during flu season. This is flu season as well. We have had, when we met with Lee Health, they had indicated to us that we've already had 2 spikes in terms of the incidence of flu here in Lee County, and we're expecting to have a 3rd one after spring break, which is what commonly occurs until we get into a warmer season and get out of flu season. So unlike years past, where it's typical to have 2, this year we actually are probably going to experience 3 spikes in terms of the number of influenza that we see. So that's also a very serious thing that has already resulted in a number of deaths here in Lee County as a result of just the flu. So regardless of all this, our maintenance department, or not regardless, but our maintenance department and our custodians do the deep cleaning. They do have chemicals that are effective against the novel coronavirus or COVID-19. And so, we just wanted to make the public aware of that. And I'm going to be leaving here with Beth and staff to go to the sheriff's department for the press conference. And I would encourage people to view that, because that will provide a lot of information to the public. We will continue to communicate out to the public. If we go long with questions here from the board, we can come back, because we are going to need to leave at about 20 after. But we do plan to return, and we can take it up at that point. Dr. Pruitt will sit in for me while I'm at this press conference, and then again, like I said, we will return. But do you have any questions for now?
I think Ms. Gittens and then Ms. Patrica.
Okay, thank you so much for all that everyone is doing. I've had some conversations with some teachers that are concerned because in some of the buildings they are short on custodial staff. and their concern is, are their rooms getting really cleaned every day, or is just the trash going out? So that's one question, how are we handling that particular issue?
Okay, well, in terms of our maintenance staff and our custodial staff, I mean, they are required to do that deep cleaning, and if they need necessary overtime to cover for absences, that is certainly something we can do. Principals would be encouraged to be in touch with our maintenance department if they are short-staffed and can't complete the job. So the expectation, regardless of absences, would be that this cleaning does continue to occur.
And can you make sure that the principals, I guess, are aware that they can do overtime if that's necessary? Thank you. The other question is, I think, the question with everybody, who gets tested when, how do we know if a child comes in and they're sniffling? Do they get tested? How does that work? Who tests them? Where does it go from that point?
Sure. So the guidance that we've received from the health department, we have the signs and symptoms that are common for this virus, which mimic the cold and flu, with respiratory being more of a concern with this virus. It is not our job in the schools to test. We are just making parents aware. If they come to the clinic with the signs and symptoms, then we are calling the parents to notify them that they must contact their healthcare providers for further, if they need testing or any kind of treatments. We are not providing that in the schools.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mrs. Patrica?
Dr. Adkins, you mentioned deep cleaning of classrooms. What about buses? Do we do that on a regular basis during flu season and now?
Yes, we do.
Just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Ms. Jordan?
My question is, well, thank you all for what you're doing, but I know Ms. Morgan and I attended a function this past weekend, and it was a no handshake function. Tomorrow night, we'll be having a bunch of students coming up, and as they always do, come across and shake hands. What are we thinking on that part? Are we still shaking hands? Is it no shaking?
Elbows.
What are we doing?
We can certainly, as a team, if you'd like to do, elbows or something like that, that's fine, whatever. That hadn't occurred to me, so thank you for bringing it up. But that makes
Good
sense.
point.
We'd like to do
Yes.
that.
You can come up with a sign or something that wouldn't require you to touch hands. High five.
Want a child to feel
Great job. Sure, of course.
or the
And I think if that's presented at the beginning, just to notify them, this is what we're going to do, that way no one feels slighted.
Yeah, we can.
Thank you for that, because Susan mentioned that to me, and I said, well, I would wait until after we
Sure.
heard from you today.
I think that's a great idea. I would say the less direct contact that you have with individuals, the better.
Okay, and we'll make that announcement at the beginning of tomorrow's meeting. Ms. Vaughn?
Perfect.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on what Ms. Patrica asked. Okay, so the buses are cleaned. Isn't it the bus drivers that are responsible for cleaning their own bus? Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
Okay, and I understand that there have been some difficulties with that, having to do with, like, if a bus is late, the overtime, and the other thing is, who is it exactly? I know we're short-staffed in transportation. Who is it exactly that's checking up on that is following up? And are they being given maybe some different kind of cleaning products to clean their buses?
My understanding is that they will be given this special disinfectant that is approved to kill the coronavirus, the COVID-19, and gloves and accessories to be able to clean their buses.
So it looks like maybe we can get an answer from Mr. Savage, or Dr. Savage, on who's checking up on, who's following up on it, and the whole idea of overtime if buses are late.
As I'm sure you can gather, this has been a team effort all the way through, and Beth has been fantastic to work with as we kind of look at each unit, whether it's all schools, whether it's our sites here, such as this building, or transportation. There are essentially 3 cleaning products specifically that are of the strength that they specify within the product that they can kill the coronavirus, specifically that prepare and strengthen us against this, along with the specific directions for each of those 3 products. The transportation daily cleaning expectation is able to do that, I have it sitting on my desk actually right now, a bottle of the cleaner and the product information so that I could also review it because it wasn't part of this other information because it was separate for transportation. We just want to make sure it had the sufficiency clearly identified within that product. That said, because of that awareness, all of the directors, essentially our director of transportation as well as each of his particular subordinates are well aware of this increased vigilance. While we certainly expect the buses to be cleaned with a regular schedule every day, this is part of the significance of needing an appropriate level of supervision and management. So again, we thank the board for enhancing that level of management so we can make sure that all these things are being done. Additionally, if there's any concerns that a bus may need deeper level of cleaning or that it's had issues that we've had concern of that piece, it can also be routed to the mechanical area where it can receive a specific additional set of eyes if there's ever concerns that it isn't being cleaned with that level of sufficiency.
But what about the question about overtime? I noticed there's 87% late for the end of the day, and they're cleaning, I'm assuming, at the end of the day, not before they go out, or...
I'm happy to explore and find out for you some more specific information of just how many would be required for additional overtime. Obviously, this is a consideration across the entire organization that we believe these things can be done within our normal flu season operating procedures. It's really the same procedures that are in place, so we don't anticipate additional pieces, but just knowing that there is an increased awareness and concern from the community, we would certainly be willing to just engage in a little bit more conversation. I could bring some information back to you for that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, board members? Ms. Giovanelli?
No, go ahead.
So, and I apologize for being late, but was there, I can't scroll up and down on this, so to see if there's a travel ban for spring break next week or what that entails?
You want to take that?
Sure, I can address that. So we did meet this morning with the chiefs and the superintendent to devise a plan that we are rolling out this afternoon to the schools as well as to the parents with information on travel bans that have been in consideration and recommendation from the CDC. So at this, and then we will upload that as well onto the website so that it's available for everyone to view. So currently, we are advising anyone that travels to the 5 countries that have been designated level 2 or level 3 by the CDC for concern, that if you are traveling to those during spring break, once you come back to the States, that you notify your healthcare provider or the health department for recommendations if you need to be self-quarantined.
Thank you.
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Gittens.
I heard this morning in a report from a doctor that they're not as concerned about children getting the virus as they are children being around older relatives and bringing it into the schools. So are we, and it may be way out there, but to determine, students that do live with older relatives to have, a closer watch on them?
Mm-hmm. It is known that children are not affected as seriously right now by this virus from what we know. It's mainly elderly, or if you have underlying pre-existing health conditions, you're more at risk. We are going to continue to update our website, and that could be something that maybe we can add for those who live with elderly grandparents, that they just need to be more diligent in knowing the signs and symptoms and when to seek medical treatment.
Thank you. Ms. Whip, thank you. I know that
Thank
you have
you.
to go to
Yes.
the press conference with Dr. Atkins.
Yes,
I wanna
ma'am.
Thank you for your leadership on this, and we
Welcome.
appreciate your expertise.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Just real quick, so we're not canceling any out-of-country spring break trips that are in schools and stuff like that, that we,
There have been some trips, yes, out of country that have been canceled.
Okay, I
And
just- I
at this
didn't
time,
know.
we're monitoring what we do inside the country.
thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Pruitt.
Good afternoon.
Hey. At this time, we will begin our review of tomorrow's board meeting agenda. Okay. Dr. Pruitt, I'll turn it over to you. Okay, great, thank you.
All right, so the first one was Susan, Executive Services, about where board member comments can be found.
I think extensive notes, however, back in November of 2014, the board decided not to put all of the extensive verbiage in minutes, and it's just very minimal, the actions that were taken. I do take those notes if the board has a consensus for something. That gets put in the minutes, but not usually just individual comments unless there's some sort of directive.
Well, may I?
Yes, Ms. Gittens.
It's my question because on the minutes of the meeting where we did have the consensus on the attorney, it was not listed. It, you know, I think it just said,
So you're asking for a specific set of minutes?
well, I was referring to the one that we did, was it a briefing or workshop? Briefing, I guess, where we talked about the attorney in our last one. But I can get with you on it. I just think that, I know they're very minimal, but perhaps just a bit more to make it a little more, I mean, we're relying totally on the visual, the audio-visual for our historic, you know, what happened. And so maybe have your notes as an extra in case we need something type thing?
So you're looking at the briefing minutes that are in this agenda? Mm-hmm. If you look under good of the order, it does say the board reached consensus to direct the district staff
Right.
to negotiate. So what are you?
Well, my question was, even mentioning that there was 10 minutes each of discussion by each board member prior to the consensus. That was one thing I thought should be in there. But,
That's up to the board.
I know.
I think back in 2014, when we made this decision, it was because there's no room for misinterpretation whenever you have the video. So I think that was the rationale for that at that time. But, you know, we can always discuss things as we move forward.
Yeah, I would like to bring it up. And I mean, not to do copious notes in there, but a little more detail.
Any other comments?
All right, the next item was from Academic Services about the anticipated impact of the new standards, Dr. Spiro.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt. The best standards are the new standards that are coming down from the Department of Education, and they're going to focus first on ELA standards and then the math standards. And so the instructional materials for world languages will not be impacted by this, but the textbook companies, as you could imagine, are paying very close attention to the standards as we transition, and we have been assured by the Chancellor of Education that any new materials we purchase will be reflective of the new standards that are coming down.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Business Services. Dr. Desamore, Ms. Vaughn had asked about the breakdown of the 55 million in specific projects was the first one.
Yes, good afternoon, members of the board. So the question was about the breakdown of the 55 million into specific projects. So this resolution is specifically related to the expenditures for middle school MM. So this is all about middle school MM. So the $55 million is a rounded number for the project cost of MMM. And that project cost was board approved on January 14. So it would be any expenditures related specifically to that one project. Did that fully answer the question? So maybe I can,
I guess maybe I missed something.
yeah, so maybe I could go on to the next
that it
question and
was
just kind
all
of
on just that
explain
one-
what the, yeah, so let me just explain what the resolution is, and maybe that will help. So middle school MM project cost has been board approved, as I said, on January 14, and that's going to be funded by a COPS, remember, related to the new legislation that came into play about if you plan on exceeding cost per student station, then it must be some outside or local source of funding in which you could do that through a COPS. Like, it had to be COPS related in order to be able to expend, you know, outside of the per student station cost. So middle school MM is going to be funded for a COPS, of which we don't yet have. What this resolution does is it makes it possible for us to expend money for middle school MM from any funding source and then reimburse ourselves through the COPS proceeds once we receive the COPS proceeds. So that's what this resolution is related to, and that's why we have to do it, because of the fact that we will be expending money for MMM before the COPS proceeds come in the door.
Okay, yeah, somehow I missed that it was just that one.
It's just the one.
Okay.
Yep, it's just the one.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens.
That's all right. I know, they both start with G, it's hard. What is the capacity of MMM?
Student station capacity?
Yes.
I think 1,200.
Okay,
Yes. Okay.
there he is. I knew he was going to speak up. Considering the need that we have for middle school student stations in that area, has there been any consideration of making it larger, or adding student stations to it? Hi.
There's potential for 8 more classrooms to be added on to the plan that we're looking to need. We've increased our HVAC, our electric, our water, all sprinkler utilities in preparation should that ever occur.
And that would take it up to a total of approximate?
8 classrooms times 20, got 1 more students.
Okay. And when will that decision be made?
Whenever planning felt they need seats.
We can toss you a thing back
Here.
It wasn't something that we were planning to do during this construction. It was for a future growth, so we upsized the campus so that for future growth or at a future period, when deemed necessary, we could make that addition. But it wasn't to be done at this point.
Well, the only consideration of that is that when we look at our numbers at the middle schools in that zone, it's not going to be enough, 1,200 seats.
So respectfully, if we could hold that question, and I will make sure we address it at the first workshop, I think, or I could be briefing, but I know at the first set of meetings in April, Dominic and his team are going to be bringing a growth discussion as it relates to the capital improvement plan for this coming year, and I will make sure that Dominic includes that issue in the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
Just out of curiosity, Kathy, don't leave. Are most of the new schools now being built with the idea that perhaps they're going to have an expansion? I know what I was used to in Texas, most of the schools came in with X number of seats, and then they said, but we're going to put an extension here, we're going to put an expansion there.
Something we evaluate on a case-by-case basis, depending on the area. As we move towards proximity, remember that we want to reduce our student area. So the other thing that we evaluate is, if not this school, where would we? So it may not be that particular school, but we definitely have that evaluation done.
Every new school we build, Gateway High School, has that addition capability. MMM will have it, J on MMM.
Yeah, that's basically the capability. Obviously, I don't know what that means, what you would have to add. Obviously, more space, like buildable land next to the existing building, or...
But we've allocated space to add on to the existing. We've widened up those stair towers at those ends of the buildings to accommodate that connection. And we increased all the sizes of our central energy plant, our electrical capabilities and so forth. So in preparation for that.
Okay, and are some of them possibly going to go vertical?
No.
Adding
no.
no?
If
You
it- if
would
it
not do a
it's-
third floor, because that's...
It's cost prohibitive, and then like to do on a hospital, extremely cost prohibitive to go back in an occupied building and weld and do all those things you need to do above
Just
in a whole school.
out of curiosity how that would be. Thank you.
And then it just,
Giovanelli?
Just real quick, so you're telling me that the infrastructure is there for future growth?
All of the infrastructure is designed to pick up that additional capacity based on the number of classrooms we anticipate adding.
and in your growth, deliberations, you are taking into consideration the number of portables and traveling teachers.
That's outside of my wheelhouse.
You said that too gleefully.
So portables are considered, but understand that under state statute, portables are considered permanent student stations in the district, not necessarily that location, but in the district. So if we have, and this is vastly underestimated, but I'm not a very good math person, so I have to keep my numbers simple, 1,000 student stations in the district or in an area, and 200 student stations are portables, that means you have 1,200 student stations. Those 200 student stations are permanent to the district until at least 20 years, or until we can deem them unsatisfactory student stations, if we own them. If we rent them, it's not that way. You can get rid of them as soon as you're done using them. But if we own the portables, and most of the portables we do own, they're considered permanent student stations to the district. So when we're working with the state to determine the availability to build new capacity, we have to account for those student stations that are deemed satisfactory student stations.
Okay, I'll wait for the other.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you all. We appreciate you.
Hey, Dr. Desamore, on-call security guard services.
So, yes, so the question was, how does this service for on-call security guard services relate to our agreements and contracts with the Sheriff's Department for services? It really don't. The two don't relate. This particular one is a service for on-call unarmed security guards that we need at various locations. Where we utilize them most would be our front desk out here at LCPEC, and then at Public Service Academy. The Sheriff's Department, their agreement with us, of course, provides our SROs, and then also provides, say, the security in here for our briefings and meetings. So.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
I just have one question. How many, employees is that? Do you know how many employees are there on that?
I don't know exactly how many different employees cycle in and out from us, and I think is that your question? How many different employees have we utilized? I don't know, but I could certainly find that information out.
Thank you.
And would it be I'm sorry, ma'am. Would it be something to look at that, piggybacking with the sheriff's agreement that we already have? I mean, since you're saying unarmed or whatever.
Yeah, I think it would depend on, this is a safety and security issue, so certainly I don't want to overstep, but I think it would depend on what kind of service we needed. Of course, if we're going through the Sheriff's Department, these are, licensed officers, so that service is going to be more costly.
Yes.
So it depends on what type of service it is that we're looking for, whether we think we need that level, or whether it be a different level. So did you want to?
Just that we already do currently contract with for like a special detail rate, which, is what provides for our officers to be here in some of our board meetings in our after-hours capacity. That above and beyond, that is a separate budgeted item as well, in addition to this, which again would be it's trying to match the appropriate level of security need at the appropriate cost for the organization to be responsible with the taxpayer funds.
I was just interested because it's, 125,000 is
Of course.
it's a big number, but thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Mrs. Giovanelli.
Ms. Gittens, though, details can be quite costly.
Right.
More than just the security aspect of what they're utilizing this vendor for. So that's all I just add to that. Thank you.
I'll keep on moving through the list of questions that I had for business services. So the next one was related to the approval to piggyback the GSA Carrier Corporation contract. So the first question was, please explain if this is paid from the sales tax revenue as its maintenance. There were several contracts on this particular agenda for this type of service for the facility management systems or HVAC agreements. So there are multiple jobs to be covered through the different contracts. The day-to-day maintenance type jobs would most likely not be sales tax funded, but the large HVAC upgrades could be sales tax funded. And I say could be because the entire sales tax funding list for next fiscal year hasn't been completely finalized as of this date. We're still working on that based on all of the projects that would need to be done next year and an assessment of what funding source would be used for each. But that's kind of the breakdown there. Did I answer that question?
You did. It was basically that I thought with the sales tax that we were, literally moving most of the maintenance type things to that funding source.
Not necessarily, especially if it was day-to-day, like what we're trying to focus our sales tax on would be maintenance, and when I say maintenance, it would be the staff maintenance, like maintenance type rotation projects that we would be doing to upgrade and keep our facilities up to the standard in which we deem appropriate for our schools. So if there was a big HVAC upgrade to be done at a particular school, that would be like a prime target for a sales tax funded project. We're upgrading the system. Most likely if we're upgrading that system, it will provide us some additional efficiency, so it will save us operational dollars. So that would be something that typically we would sales tax fund. The day-to-day maintenance type thing, like if something happens or a particular part on it breaks down where they have to go fix it, that wouldn't typically be something that we would sales tax fund, or at least that's not how we've kind of run it to date.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, and then the next question was, are there different contracts for different schools? Because I think there were 3 on this agenda item, I do believe. So the question was, are there different contracts for different schools and different companies rather than one for all schools, and would it be cheaper to combine? So there are different brand name units at different schools. So the different contracts are carried for the particular brand experts to service the different schools. And in addition, the different contracts give us the capability to have the amount of labor needed to create, to complete the volume of jobs that we have.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
And then last, there was a question on the approval to remove items from official property records. That question was, what's the difference between a stolen item and an unable to locate item? So the stolen items are those that it can be proven have been stolen and a police report has been filed on that particular item. So it's not just, somebody said, well, this must have been stolen. There's an actual police report on file for that. And then an unable to locate are those that can't be found and there's no sure indication of what happened to the item.
Okay.
So that's how we delineate between the two when you see them on the agenda item.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. The next few questions were for Human Resources, so I'll go through those. The first one was about the associate principal position. through the combined work of Human Resources and Academic Services, and I honestly don't remember who identified it first, but it came out of, there's other districts around the country that utilize this model, and it's sort of, it's built in as part of the succession planning to help us build our capacity for principals. But the idea would be that this position would be available primarily at our high needs schools. For example, East Lee County High School would be a prime example where we know that an administrator is going to be retiring, so we want to build that capacity. Also, we have principals that would be great principal leads, but due to the high need of the building that they're in, they really can't commit that time without having, you know, somebody else there that could take on that role of principal while the real principal is out helping other folks. So it really is just providing us the opportunity to utilize that in a variety of ways as part of our updated, you know, leadership and talent acquisition manual that we're in the process of developing. So it's a piece of that.
Ms. Gittens?
So, okay, it's a pay grade 13. How does that align with assistant principals? And question number 2, since all other administrative positions have pools, is there a pool for this?
There was not a plan at this time to have a pool for the associate principal position. I believe that the thinking is that it could be requested through the budget process, and then there would be individuals that were interested could apply for the position. We're still kind of in the working through it stages. Step 1 was to get the job description and get that going. So that's kind of where we're at with that. I don't know if Dr. Spiro, if you had anything else you wanted to add about that? Okay.
And what's your timeline on it?
For
Hiring
it to
people
be
to do-
available for the next school year, potentially. The actual next step would be to, once the job description is approved, it kind of will sit in the queue until we complete the leadership talent acquisition manual, which we're in the process of bringing stakeholders together and reviewing the process that we have and getting input from people who got in the pools the first time, people who haven't gotten in the pools, and just kind of get the feedback from stakeholders as we move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, then Ms. Vaughn.
Is this just going to be one position, or is it going?
It's a
what's it
job
look like?
description
Right.
that the position, our thinking was, like I said, primarily be available for a high-need school.
Right, but we have a
East Lee
few of
County,
those.
Fort Myers Middle, right, right. But it wouldn't be, if you had the associate principal, that would sort of be in place of one of the assistant principals. It wouldn't be like adding then another one on top of it. It would be, let's say if due to the formula, you had, the school was eligible for 3 assistant principals, and they were going to have an associate principal, they'd have 2 assistant principals, an associate principal, and a principal.
So why wouldn't you just use the assistant principal pool and just pull from that versus, I think,
Well, you'd have to be in the principal pool, which means you're eligible to be a principal in
Gotcha.
order to be considered for the associate principal.
gotcha, okay,
Yes.
thank you, that's, I
Yep.
meant the pool.
Oh,
yes.
sorry, yep.
At least,
And then Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, really several things here. First of all, just to say that this is something for the high-need school, that's way too vague. Before I would approve this, if I do approve it, because I'm not feeling good about this position, I would want to see real specifics on why one particular school is eligible for this and another one might not be eligible for it. Secondly, we're adding an awful lot of layers on with the principals. They have their assistant principals. They have a assistant principal, like in the high schools, for curriculum. And then everybody's part of has a lead, principal lead, and then they're in a group. honestly, if a principal is 100% qualified, I think he or she has a lot of scaffolding available to them for help, and I really don't see the necessity on this. That's my own personal opinion, but I do feel like we keep adding layers in our administrative areas, and I'm not sure if some of these might be better served with some of the outside assistance that principals can get from their principal lead, and also maybe adding another assistant principal.
Well, again, this position would be in place of an assistant principal position.
Right.
It wouldn't be an addition. And the whole idea is that if there was an associate principal at a location, that principal then would be able to potentially assist as a principal lead or to help out in district projects or to whatever the case may be. And again, it came out of looking at other school districts that have been successful with their succession planning and building their bench, because the associate principal would also be sort of a one step up of getting experience as a principal before you actually become one, which has shown that it's been a successful model in other districts. And what is coming before you tomorrow is the job description only. You're not committing to anything else. There's no budgetary commitment. There's no, you're not committing to anything other than the job description at this
No,
point.
I hear that, but once we have a job description, then we have the jobs, and there becomes no limit on it. And I've been frank about this in the past. I just feel like we're getting very administrator-heavy on positions, and I think we need to be putting more emphasis on the people that are actually in the classrooms teaching, rather than adding more and more and more layers of leadership and giving more leadership responsibility to our teachers in the classroom. Obviously not to be a principal, but no, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not comfortable with the need for this position at this time.
Okay, Ms. Giovanelli, then Mrs. Gittens.
So I'm understanding this, it's like a stepping stone.
Correct. Correct.
They would be the next principal
Correct.
for that particular school that they're at? I mean, so that's,
They could be eligible for that, but it doesn't mean they could be eligible, because potentially if the school they're an associate principal at, if that principal doesn't go anywhere, they could be a principal at another school. They would have that opportunity as well. In other words, they're not locked in to say you can only be principal at this school.
well, I get that. My concern would be that someone in that position taking the job, or, taking that particular position, and then the principal leaves and they don't get that. I mean, and they thought that the reason why they were there to begin with is for the succession plan, and
Right.
and so because that's what we were talking about.
Correct.
So that I just don't want any misconceptions, and I think it kind of leaves it open for that a little bit. And this is kind of a little bit off, but I know recently we've added deans back in schools versus APs, and,
Not versus APs.
Okay.
The deans are instructional positions.
Okay.
To assist with discipline, with the really trying to work with restorative justice and to keep students in the school rather than out of school. There's been the need for increased support with student behavior, but the dean position is a TALC position. It is not an administrative position.
thank you, because I was going to ask about that.
Yep.
And you just reminded me, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Yeah, that was what I was going to mention too, that, I kind of agree with Ms. Vaughn that we've got principals, associate principal, assistant principal, deans, and a lot of the deans are people that are in the assistant principal pool, and, thinking that they can move up. But the comment I wanted to make is, in my understanding in the past, the assistant principals were the ones that, when the principal was not there, did this associate principal job, and it rotated between however many of them that were there in order to do just what you said, which is to build that bench and to build their capacity to eventually move into the principal pool or principal role. And if you've got all these assistant principals with that aspiration, and then you're adding another layer for them to jump over, I don't see where that's necessarily fair or equitable to everybody, because, a lot of people got into the pool thinking, I can do this and work with the principal, and on certain days, the principal's at a meeting, I'm in charge, and that gives me that experience, and I can move on. But now you're saying, no, you can't, because there's somebody already there. That's my
Well, I
concern.
don't think we're saying that, but I understand what you're saying. Okay?
Okay.
The next question was in reference to who oversees the school social workers. So Amy Clark is the director of, and I think I saw her walk in, if there's any questions specifically for her.
What, I just didn't know, what position, it's a director, what's the name of the,
Director of Schools, Psychology, and Social Workers, and it's in the Division of Academic Services.
Okay, so then, why do we need a lead in addition?
Amy, did you want to speak to that?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We have a large number of social workers. Right now, we have 53 social workers in our department that are providing services to all of our schools. They provide primarily Tier 3 services in the areas of truancy enforcement and attendance, therapeutic services, counseling type of services, as well as wraparound services and child welfare support. The request for the lead is to provide additional support services to our social workers in the schools, both to partner with them to co-lead counseling groups for our students experiencing trauma, as well as assist with some of the complex situations that come up. We are triaging every day some of our most complex needs in each of our schools come to our social workers each day, and we are very quickly overwhelmed with the support to provide them from this level. So this individual would provide both training and on-site support to our school social workers in schools.
I also want to mention that, thank you, Amy. I also wanted to mention that all of these requests for supplemental job descriptions, they come forward in a variety of ways to us in Human Resources, but they are all vetted through the supplement committee, which consists, it's a bargained committee. It has teachers, social workers, athletic directors, and so forth, as well as school and district leadership that serve on the supplement committee. So it isn't just that somebody comes forward and says, we want you to, it's vetted and goes through that supplement committee, which has equal representation of TALC and management to consider all of those various positions.
Okay, and it says the job code to be determined. So would this be somebody who would stay in his or her role as a social worker and receive a supplemental salary, or is it totally
Yeah.
like a department chair kind of thing, or?
No.
This would be a person whose sole role would be to provide support to all of the district social workers.
Are you thinking of one as a need or more?
One person. Right now, we currently have a zone lead in each of our zones, and they do have a social work position as well as provide some lead support services with a supplement. And this would be a separate position that would be solely to provide support district-wide.
Okay, so the zone leads, that wouldn't be more effective to add more at the zone lead positions? That's what I'm not understanding. It just seems like something like this already exists if you have zone leads that go out to their particular zone to assist with problems.
So they have a full-time social work position, the zone leads do, and so they provide some level of support. They provide regular PLCs and mentoring support, but our system's pretty quickly inundated with the needs, and so it's not sufficient at this time to provide the level of support that's needed, in addition to providing some of that counseling support as well.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Ms.
And
Jordan.
if I may,
Yeah.
so the zone lead they have their own caseload,
Correct,
and then this individual person will be there to help all of them.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just remember the increased emphasis on mental health and the increased needs that we're seeing at our school sites have made it that we need all the help we can get.
Okay.
That was what I was going to say. Is this in response to the increased needs regarding compliance with state requirements?
Correct, yes.
Can I raise an item for good of, not good of the order, but we're almost at 2 o'clock, and I see that we have many professional committee chairs here who have to get back to work.
Yes.
So can we
Yes.
turn to the attorney for advice on how to stop this and pick it up
Yes.
later?
Yes, we can do that. Mr. Quick?
You're asking you want to stop it now, pick it up after the next meeting?
Chairs reports, advisory committee chair reports.
Okay.
Since people are,
Well, and maybe get advice from Dr. Pruitt as to whether staff that's here for the briefing, whether we need to do that now, too. I just want to respect people's time.
Right. I mean, I think we're good. We can, yeah, we're good. So we can move on to shut this down and start the next meeting and
Yeah, I
get
mean,
back to
if
it.
that's the will of the chair of the board.
Why are we?
Discuss that? We only have, how many more questions left? Can we go ahead and complete that? I mean, I think it would ask the rest of the board to decide.
Yeah,
board members in favor of suspending the workshop and entertaining the reports from the advisory committee chairs, please, thumbs up. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3 down, 3 up, and 1 can live with it, so. Yes.
I guess my question would be, how much conversation do you all need on all these questions that?
That we can't ask.
I mean, is it going to be like a 5-minute conversation?
No way to predict that.
Or is it going to take quite some time where it's not going to affect them? That would be my
Well, I
question.
mean, if we allow staff to come up and answer the questions and don't add more questions to that, then we should get through it quickly. If we feel like we have more questions that are going to be generated by comments, then maybe we need to respect the time of our community professionals.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, Betsy?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we probably would have gotten through this, but we added, which was very important, the information on the coronavirus first. So if that had been put second, or I feel like tomorrow's our meeting, and
I'm not suggesting we don't return to the answers to these questions. I'm suggesting that we respect the time of our community members who volunteer so that they can get back to their day jobs, and then
I
we can
certainly,
return.
please don't put words in my mouth that I'm not
Okay,
respecting their time. I am.
In the interest of time, we're
Let's
going
just finish
to,
this.
we're going
Wasting
to
the time
suspend.
discussing
the-
it.
In the interest of time, we're going to suspend the workshop, and we're going to entertain those reports, which take a minimal of time, and then we'll resume this after that. So is that,
Yeah, do you want to resume after the completion, just so I want to make sure
Just after
everybody's
the
clear, after the
completion
completion
of
of
the
the reports? Okay.
yes. Okay.
So then we switch to
We'll need
Ms.
time
Jordan.
to stop the taping and all that.
Do we need time?
They will need in the control room
Yes.
to change from one meeting to another.
Right,
Oh, okay.
And then we have to start again.
right,
And then we will stop again and then come back again to the briefing?
right. For recording purposes.
Are they ready? Oh.
Can you check?
The briefing meeting.
You can close this meeting and then open your briefing, and they'll be ready to go.
Okay, so at this time, we will close the workshop, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Jordan for the briefing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it is 2:04, and we will begin our briefing. And after we have our quarterly reports, we will then suspend this meeting and resume our workshop. And then we'll return.
Stop.
We just need a couple minutes in between the workshop and the briefing meeting to start a new record and all that. So
Am I waiting for you?
close if this meeting is closed, we'll just turn the lights off for a minute or two and restart. Once the lights come back on, you'll be ready to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I apologize. Got the wrong memo.